Okay, good morning and welcome to our first session of our Future of Media Trading event. I'm joined today by three illustrious media personnel. I have Kate Rowlinson from MediaCom, CEO of MediaCom. Say hello, Kate.
Hi there.
All right, welcome. Hamish Nicklin, who has started a new job during lockdown, which we might come back to later. Hamish, I think you have a very nice new title, Executive Director of Media at Dentsu Aegis Network. Is that right?
That is right. Hello, Greg. Hello, everyone. How are you all?
Welcome. And Gurman, I'd like to say thanks to you as an entrepreneur amongst these two wage slaves we have here, co-founder and CEO of MIQ. Yeah, welcome to I think your debut on a Mediatel event.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Hi.
Yeah. So we've got a good session today. This is notionally set up as to discuss the effects of trading during the crisis that we're in, but also I wanted to look further afield of that. This was an event that we'd planned pre the crisis, so it would have run anyway. But I think it's become, arguably more interesting because we've all had to do trading in slightly different ways than we've done previously. So let's start with that view of how the current crisis has affected agency client relationships and also what sort of questions that advertisers are asking you guys. Kate, maybe you'd like to start.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, I think the most important question really, and the one that we always focus on, whatever the situation is, how can I get the best return on my marketing investment? And that's as true now as it always has been, and one that underpins all the relationships that we have with our clients. I mean, that being said, we are obviously in a very unique situation, and there are many other questions which emerge, such as what insights do you have for planning for the new normal? Are the behaviours adopted during lockdown the ones that will stick around? And a big question that we're getting a lot actually is what's happening in other markets that can inform how we plan and deploy our investments. So, from my perspective, we've been very connected with our wider network, our global network. Over recent weeks, I've been speaking a lot to our CEO in China, for example, because obviously they're further ahead. But other questions: what should my messaging be, and how should I adapt it? How should I manage budgets across the rest of the year, and so on? But I think really it depends entirely on which category you're operating in and how your business is performing, and also what phase of the crisis you're in. So, has demand in your category dramatically reduced? Automotive, travel, theatrical film releases, for example, or is demand stable or even increasing? So certain retail categories, supermarkets, home entertainment, streaming services. And what are the short and medium and long-term forecasts for demand and consumer behaviour in your category? And I think there's also both a tactical and a strategic response to the situation. So in the acute lockdown phase, most discussions I think are in the tactical space. So in March, late March and April, for those clients seeing dramatic reductions in demand due to lockdown, how can I cancel or defer money and minimise penalty? When should I plan to come back to market and how? My budgets are going to be reduced to conserve cash flow in the business. How should my media strategy and deployment adapt? But for clients seeking spikes in demand, the questions are more around how can I adapt my messaging and approach to meet customer demand and expectations? How can I get a campaign created, produced, and executed in a fraction of the time it would normally take? How long should that creative run for? And of course, how can I make use of the available market, the available value in the media market? So lots of different questions depending on category and client. But I think this early stage has been a very, very intense experience for our teams and our clients, all done via video conferencing from home. And I think as Mark Reed has said, we're seeing a year's worth of innovation in a matter of weeks. And it's really astonishing, I think, how quickly people have adapted. I think moving out of the acute lockdown phase, conversations become more strategic. So planning for different scenarios. How can I capitalise on new consumer behaviours? What's the new normal for my category? And so on. And I think, we have a very diverse client base across MediaCom and all of our offices. So we're dealing with most categories and you know, a lot of different categories and situations. But what's really vital for us is that we are right by our client's side, navigating this together and being both relevant and responsive throughout this period.
Thanks for that. Hamish, is that similar to the Dentsu experience? Have you had anything specific or any individual clients asking for perhaps more bespoke solutions?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything, you know, this is day 6, maybe day 7 so far. But you know, obviously landing in the middle of this crisis.
You handed any hospital passes on day 1?
No, everyone's been incredibly kind from day 1 onwards.
Lovely.
Maybe in day 8, maybe after this call. No, the reality is, look, this is day 6, 7, but I've spent a lot of time with the teams understanding how we're working with clients at this moment in time. And I think that everything that Kate has said there is very consistent. You know, what's really interesting, they say, is how it moved from how to deal with the immediate crisis, like how do we protect our businesses today? And once that bit was dealt with in terms of looking at our marketing spend, looking at the impact on supply chains, etc., and people had a better understanding of how to navigate through this short-term period, the questions then very quickly moved to, well, what happens next? What's going to be the shape of the media landscape after this? What consumer behaviors that we've currently seen that we're all experiencing, like this call that we're having now, how will those behaviors continue after the crisis? And so how do we start planning to change the way that we communicate about our products and our services to potential customers and existing customers after the event? And that's really interesting. I think the teams are getting really excited by some of those. In terms of your specific question about bespoke things, absolutely. I mean, that happens quite a lot. And again, Kate touched on it, and it depends on the industry that you're in. You know, we have, like many do, we have a range of clients across a range of industries. And you know, some of those things that we're talking to them about are absolutely fascinating.
Right, thanks. Gurman, you're obviously running a global business. Would you echo what the guys have said, or have you heard different things from different markets, perhaps? But perhaps you could expand on that. If you've had different clients from different territories asking you to behave in different ways.
Yeah. Hey, it's very consistent actually with what the guys have said, to be honest, and it is consistent across markets in terms of the short-term reaction and then the long-term sort of planning and dealing with the sort of uncertainty, really. But I think the big trend I've seen about and this is across all markets, is that those that are still wanting to spend are really going big on addressable and connected TV. And I think there was a trend of like traditional TV moving to a more digitally transacted TV ad model. I think that trend has massively been accelerated. And certainly like video, YouTube, like I'd say nearly 3.5 times the amount of demand we had in sort of YouTube video read executions or CTV, addressable TV. It's gone up, you know, from what bookings we had in February and March. Like most of our bookings now are of those components. So I'm seeing like clients that still want to spend try to take advantage of emerging digital trends, like the convergence of offline to online on TV and video, for example.
Well, there are brave clients out there, aren't there? That's for sure. And yeah, that goes on to that sort of trust level again. And Hamish, you've been both sides of the fence in recent times. Do you think, again, with your more neutral head on, do you think that this situation will have improved agency client trust levels, or vice versa?
Well, I think the answer is it totally depends. It depends on how the client teams are dealing with their customers and their clients. You know, at the end of the day, if you think about what makes trust, often it is in moments of crisis or when things go wrong that trust actually can be strengthened. Because, you know, and again, you know, Kate said this, if you feel like you're shoulder to shoulder with your clients and they feel that they are with you, and you're in the trenches with them, trying to help them on a daily basis to solve this problem, they won't forget it. And, you know, as long as you do it for the right reasons, which is you really want to help their businesses be protected in this environment and then come out of it stronger, I think that will absolutely help. And, you know, the more you can more we can encourage our client teams to work with the clients to be proactive about coming up with ideas that, you know, are going to be relevant to them today and in the future, the more I think that people will really appreciate that. I mean, that's good client management and servicing anyway, but it becomes even more acute in moments of crisis like this. And I think the more that you can do that, the more those levels of trust will grow. And it's something that I'm sure every single leader of an agency is asking their teams to focus on, is focus on your clients now. Because if we take our eye off the client's problems and become inwardly focusing to say, well, okay, I've now got a cost problem, I've got a revenue problem, and we worry about what we're going to do, that's the wrong approach, right? If you take your focus off the client and focus on that, people will notice it, and clients will notice it, and they won't appreciate it because you're here to service them ultimately. And that's where the focus has to be. And so that's what we're encouraging all our teams to think about, is how can we be proactive and look after our clients first, as opposed to worrying about ourselves, because people remember that.
Okay, just a slight twist on that for you, Kate. Are you worried that the lack of face-to-face contact is going to harm trust levels? Have you put actions in place to try and redress that? I mean, there's nothing. Yeah, I'm not sure where I'm going to be handshaking anyone ever again, but that lack of lack of physical contact. Yeah.
You know what? I think actually the opposite. I think, I mean, I would echo a lot of what Hamish has just said, but I think there is actually a new level of connection, intimacy, maybe that's not the right word, driven by remote working. So even though we're all working from home and we're not meeting face to face, barriers are being broken down every day. And as we see our clients at their kitchen tables with their kids, so I do believe, Hamish, your daughter just walked in then.
She did.
And that's happening, you know, quite regularly now. I know my kids have kind of burst into various meetings that I've been having, you know, in front, you know, lots of impressive bookshelves, right? That's a thing now, isn't it? I think people, I think I've missed an opportunity here not to be sitting in front.
No, I think none of us. Hamish has got some wine. Yeah. Picture of your dad there, Gurman, is that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Thank you, very good. Yeah, you and I have got nothing. I'm in my son's bedroom, so I've got.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I've got an Oasis poster and a train spotting poster, which I thought might say, again, if Twitter was analysing me, we'd be in real trouble, wouldn't we? Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, I think all of these things are removing the formality from relationships that we have with our clients, with our colleagues and partners. And I think quite a lot of our relationships are informal anyway. The formalities of the office and the corporate environment have in many ways disappeared. And I think this is creating a new kind of relationship with our clients, which is really, really positive.
Yeah, let's come back to the changes that might be made in the future. I'll this slightly different again, and this is probably something I'd be asking if we were sat face to face holding hands anyway. Yeah, Gurman. But obviously what came out and again after was it 24 months of PwC and ISBAR doing their report. I saw a very funny meme today saying, just one more day, one more week, one more month. Have they taken have they chosen a bad time to bury good news or a good time to bury bad news? What's your view on that ISBAR PwC report, and what does that do for trust in your sector of the business?
Yeah, I think where there's an element of confusion or just a bit of a lack of awareness, then that creates a trust issue. But I do see like agencies, I think, do a great job in educating clients and bringing them on a journey and simplifying quite complex things like programmatic. I do think when clients understand what actually is going on in the supply chain and how their money flows, that they then quickly bring up trust, because it really comes down to two things. One is an understanding of where your money is going and why it's going where it's going. So, you know, in the programmatic chain, you know, you've got sort of four real categories. You've got the service fee of the person managing your spend for you. You've got the data fee that you're leveraging to sort of hit the right users and understand what you're buying, or from a verification and quality perspective. You need tech to facilitate the transaction, which is these DSPs, and then obviously you get money going into the publishers and the media owner. But the real question for a client is, why is the value being added? So if you're Burger King, for example, and you're saying, actually, all I care about is hitting every user that's seen a McDonald's TV advert, and I'm happy for half my media spend to go to the provider who tells me which devices have seen a McDonald's TV advert, then they're absolutely fine with, you know, less money going to the publisher, because they don't care actually what publisher they go on. They just want to hit that particular user. But if they don't know that's the flow of money, then I guess they do get I feel that they do lose an element of trust because they're just not aware. But I think when advertisers understand where the value is and what's valuable to them, I think they understand that there's value in the whole chain. And I think this sort of just the headline of what's the working dollar and how much goes to the publisher is not necessarily the true story of what adds value to a client. And I do think clients understand.
Yeah, the real proof of the pudding will be in total ad spend, and you touched on it earlier. And the AA forecasts last week talked about a fast fall and a slower recovery. I mean, has that been your view? And again, obviously in non-UK markets, have you seen money coming back quicker, and if so, from which markets and which sectors?
Yeah, I'll just give you a quick synopsis of what we said. So Q1, China, all the work we did last year in launching in China got massively impacted at the start of Q1. There was nothing that was the first start. Then I'd say almost like early March, mid-March was really where, you know, the shit hit the fan really. And I think what we noticed there was actually Southeast Asia didn't get impacted at all. Like they were sort of almost felt like they'd got over their first wave and they were sort of almost feeling like on a rebound. And so that didn't get impacted. Where we saw huge impact was in Australia, in UK, and in Canada, where I would say that you know, demand dropped, you know, plus 50%. But I'll come back to that. But where we are seeing really minimal impact right now is in the US, where the US, I'd probably say demand has dropped under 20%. And our viewpoint is in the US is that there's going to be an economic impact and a bit more of a realization of a longer health crisis, that the impact is probably going to be more felt in Q3. But what we then did see in our other markets like UK, Canada and Australia is almost revenue doubled from May to April. So we did see a big recovery that quickly as we saw advertisers.
So a quick recovery again. Kate, is that what you're expecting? I've not seen the Group M forecast. Is there a MediaCom view on a recovery path? Is it? Yeah, we've got your old boss Sir Martin on later, and no doubt he'll have a bath or a U or a V or a drain pipe or something. Yeah, what shape recovery do you think?
I think, you know, of course, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think anybody does. And I think, you know, the news is obviously quite difficult to watch and read at the moment. There's lots of, you know, highest death rate in Europe, in the UK, 14% reduction in GDP predicted last week by the Bank of England. And I think, you know, a lot of it depends on whether we have another spike in infections, whether we have to endure another lockdown. It's all dependent also on how anxious people feel. So I think one of the things that we've seen from Wuhan is that despite the fact that restrictions are now, you know, being removed ostensibly, there's a huge amount of anxiety still about becoming infected, and people are not going out as they were before. And that obviously has a big impact on the economy. That being said, we are now starting to come out of a very restrictive lockdown measure period in the UK. We are seeing money starting to come back into the media market, and some businesses are starting to get back up and running. Of course, some businesses and the businesses that we work with are doing very well throughout all of this and are growing. So what I would say is that we're exercising caution in our forecasting, but we just have to see how things develop, and we're keeping a really close eye on that. It's also obviously, again, highly dependent on the category that you're in. But I think, you know, the UK ad market has proved particularly resilient over the last few years, showing high single-digit growth in a relatively low-growth economy overall. So I'm hopeful that we will weather the storm, but we'll just have to see. But I think what we have to do and certainly as a CEO running an agency, is we've got to continue to prioritise the health, well-being, development of our people at this time, but also be by our client's side, in partnership with them, being relevant and responsive to the situation and their business needs within that.
Okay. Hamish, again, Dentsu have got obviously a good forecasting base. Have you seen any new forecasts come out in your long time?
I mean, I just think, the stuff that I've seen for H2, which is always heavily caveated for all the reasons we've just heard, which is, it depends on, are there more spikes of infection? What do governments do to react, both in terms of lockdown as well as economic stimulus and support for businesses and people? It depends on so much, but the reports that I've seen are slightly more bullish, perhaps in the AA forecasts, but not a huge amount more. And what I've also seen is that some of our larger global clients are sounding more bullish about H2. Right, they are putting money aside for H2. Now, whether that is just in case we have a further decrease of the lockdown and there's continued stimulus from governments, I don't know. The point is nobody really knows. What we're trying to do, though, is to continue to have conversations just to remind people of the value of spending on media, the value of media, the value of what it can do to a business when the time is right. And so the more we can continue to remind people of the value of this, the more that as soon as the taps, as it were, are ready to be turned on, they can be turned on in the right way for the right returns and benefits of customers, which is why we're spending a lot of our time now planning what's going to happen when lockdown comes.
Okay, and that planning involves media owners, obviously. Kate, again, have you found the media owner community flexible enough? Yeah, who's done well? Who's stood out for you in this period in terms of both allowing you to cancel, postpone, and also book flexibly going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing, frankly, unprecedented levels of flexibility from media owners across the board. So I think it's not appropriate to kind of single out any particular media, because I think stimulating demand and bringing revenue into their businesses right now is critical for all media owners, and that means we're seeing more flexibility, great deals, value opportunities, and as Hamish says, we're taking those to clients and looking at the benefits that investing in the marketplace right now can bring. And I think some media buyers are inherently more flexible than others under normal circumstances, print, digital, and that hasn't changed. And I think what we've had to accept, though, is that May and June, probably perhaps July and August, depending on what happens, are going to be late money markets. So we have to adapt and flex in order to satisfy any demand in the market. But the truth is, as Hamish has just said, if you can be active with an ad campaign right now, there is amazing value in the market, very attentive audiences, lots of assistance from broadcasters and other media owners regarding content creation, asset adaptation, and all of this is brilliant for advertisers, brands, and long-term business performance if they are able to be active in market right now.
Yeah, okay. And obviously, again, and Hamish, you're new to the business, but you'll have got a view on this outside of Dentsu. I mean, some media are going to suffer more than others, and some may never recover. Who do you think will suffer the most because of this? I mean, out of home is an obvious one that's literally fell off a cliff on day one, and I think has done a brilliant job in keeping PRing the fact that poster sites have been used really well for big broadcast messages. But do you think there'll be longer term trends for any particular media?
Well, yeah, I mean, just to, your point is clear that there are some media channels that have been more effective than others. I mean, you're not even allowed to go out and put up a poster. So, that does, of course, affect that industry. But I mean, I suppose to answer your question more broadly, I spent the last 4 years working in a media channel that everyone said was dying and dead. And I think it's safe to say that certainly in my last place, we proved people wrong, and that the innovation and creativity that sits within media owners is incredible. Because, what we've seen in the past is how people can react and adapt to the changing circumstances and survive. And I have a genuine belief and faith that our media owners will continue to do that at pace during this period of time to ensure that their business survive. You know, I can't predict the future, no one can, but if we look back and use that as an element to help us guide the future, you can see innovation and creativity is at the core of the British media industry, and that's as much for media owners as it is for media agencies. And I think that we will continue to see just a lot of innovation in how people will survive.
Yeah, I think my favourite forecasting quote is, if you're going to forecast often.
Yeah, yeah, quite right.
Yeah, go on. You're in a high growth business, in a high growth sector. Are you targeting any particular media that you think where your next stage of growth is going to come from, or are there publishers that you're working with in specific sectors who you think will benefit more coming out of this crisis than others?
Yeah, I think for me, the growth in the programmatic space is really coming from when it was out of home becoming more addressable, but let's say TV and audio. And like I said, I think the TV space, whether that's, you know, leveraging some form of data to understand what someone's watched, or whether that's accessing advertising opportunities on sort of OTT apps, which I include YouTube in, as well as just buying TV on traditional broadcasters. I think that's the area that is growing. And this particular crisis, I think, has accelerated a trend that was already happening. And certainly for us, that's like we're seeing, even in times where media dollars are down, we're seeing investment in those solutions massively increase from where they were in Q4, Q3, etc. So that's where I think the puck is heading, really.
Yeah, okay. I think I'm right in saying most of your business is through agencies, but obviously this event last year, there was a big piece we did on in-housing. I mean, that seems to have been a trend that's been overlooked in a lot of the news coverage recently. But of course, actually, if you're a client, furloughing marketing department, and you've got a big in-house programmatic team or digital media team, then suddenly it might be something that you're rethinking in a period of no spend or slow spend. I mean, you got a view on that?
Yeah, I think in-housing was almost we saw, you know, like you said, most of our businesses with our agency partners. What we saw in in-housing was two types of in-housers. One was what I'd call like an in-houser that was trying to almost run like an agency, but then sort of do tech contracts and work with media owners. Certainly when it comes to like biddable media, they would still work with partners like MIQ, etc., or some of our competitors. And then you had the in-housers who were like hands on keyboard, were trying to, you know, run and trade everything themselves. I would say 80% of the in-housers that I've seen and we've seen are the agency services in-housers versus the actual hands on keyboard doing activity themselves. But just to what you just said, I see that trend massively detracting, because I just don't think clients are going to want to have a big fixed cost base anymore. And I think clients understand there's a lot of value that agencies add, and it's this complexity out there, and you know, in terms of getting good deals, knowing what the right solution is, coming up with you know, navigating a broad media landscape and understanding how to innovate, especially in times like now, to create new solutions to stimulate spend. They've never needed an agency more than ever. And so I think the combination of, I don't think there was the trend of in-housing, we're doing it all ourselves. It was just, we might want to have a bit more of a say. It wasn't as bad as the rhetoric was. And I just think now, with the combination of cost base and the combination of the value agencies do bring, they're moving back. The pendulum is swinging back, definitely.
Okay, have you had any conversations with your clients who've had a element of in-housing which is now coming back to you, or have you got a view on that? As I say, it's been quite interesting to me that the news coverage. So if you've got a basket of clients across a basket of sectors, across a basket of markets. Of course, if you're a one product firm, or one sector, and like travel, for instance, and then suddenly it's very difficult to get those people doing other work, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think whatever our clients decide to do in this space, we'll partner with them in the way that works best for them. So we already have, we work with clients in many different ways, as Gurman's alluded to, and we'll continue to do that and evolve the operating models that we have. But, you know, do I believe that a media agency, specifically MediaCom, can add value, a huge amount of value to how a client allocates their digital media investment? Absolutely. We have huge amounts of experience and institutional knowledge when it comes to how advertising works across multiple channels and categories. Are there different ways that we can deliver that expertise? Yes. But in the end, our core competence is the allocation of media investment across all channels to drive the greatest positive business outcome for our clients. And an agency's ability to look at the bigger picture, flex budgets across channels, plan total media investment is what distinguishes us. And in that regard, I believe we can always be additive to a client's business, whether they in-house some of their media buying or not. So we're ready to partner with clients in the right way for them.
Okay, yeah, again, I think I'm agreeing. So for me, in-housing was always an interesting topic for journalists, but yeah, probably was overplayed. And actually, it did take a crisis like this shows why it's not the right solution for everyone, and probably agencies will continue to exist long in the future with partners like MRQ. Speaking of which, again, I've seen some coverage saying that with lots of redundancies and good talent coming into the market, there'll be a new wave of entrepreneurs coming out. Do we think that independence and the entrepreneurial agency sphere is going to thrive because of this, because they're not having to, again, I spoke to someone yesterday that said, I'm speaking to my global parent all day today, so providing them plan number 83 in terms of what may happen. When you're an entrepreneur, you've only got one plan. It's the plan to get through to the next day. So what do you think? Okay, and your agency of the decade, you're the biggest agency in Britain. Are you worried about a new wave of independence coming to the market?
Well, I mean, I think entrepreneurialism is evident in any business, hopefully, big or small. And I think what I've seen across our business over the last 2 months is an unprecedented level of agility, innovation, responsiveness, imagination as we work through these briefs with clients to kind of, in many ways, radically alter what they're doing and have been doing. And all of that has happened whilst we are adapting to working from home. So like, most businesses in this industry, all 1,500 of us literally worked from home overnight. One day we were in the office, next day we were working at home, and everything kind of worked. And we've learned that we're able to operate at scale whilst everyone's at home. So I think that agility and future success doesn't really depend on the size of the company, but on the will to succeed, serve customers well, protect and support their people as best they can, all of the time, not just in this new environment. And I think we've always had that at MediaCom, but it also depends on new ways of working, openness to collaboration, willingness to pivot, creativity, to change things. And I've seen, frankly, all of that in abundance across MediaCom across the last few weeks. And it makes me immensely proud of all of our teams. So I don't think it's the big who survive necessarily, but the businesses that have the ability to adapt, see the bigger picture, and embrace change.
Hamish, you're now working with Dentsu. Have you spent your 8 days? Have you been on the phone to Japan most days, talking to New York?
Yeah, listen, I'm not gonna say I haven't spoken to some of my Google colleagues, and I have no problem with speaking to them, because actually the benefit of being part of a network is you get to learn from what other markets are doing. So as Gurman and Kate have both talked about, they're both global businesses just like we are, and as a result, you talk to these people. And it's not just about reporting up of what you're doing and all of that. It's about taking the learnings of what's working in other markets so that you can apply it to yours in terms of how you best service customers, solve their problems, etc., and reorganize yourself. So that's the first thing I would say about some of those global conversations. They are helpful too.
One of the strengths is the learning from global markets.
Exactly, it's huge.
So any weaknesses you've spotted in your short time there? Again, anything?
None at all. None at all. No.
Brilliant. Yeah.
None at all.
Yeah.
Look, the other thing I would say about agility is it's a state of mind. You know, yes, there are processes that can get in the way, but ultimately, if you've got a decent state of mind and an attitude and a culture that just encourages people to be agile, you will do that, and processes will sort themselves out. And the wonderful thing about this crisis is, as we've all discovered, I'm sure everyone's seen it, is that it's forcing you to be more agile because you've got no choice. And so the state of mind is there, the will to be agile, to do things quickly, to change processes, to ignore some processes that were getting in the way, perhaps, is there. And so we're all seeing this agility, and that, I think, is incredibly powerful. And the other thing is, you know, the value of a network is not just our global experiences that we can get, but also the other services that we can bring to the table to help a client solve their problems. You know, that, I think, is a completely underestimated value of big networks. Is actually, you've got lots of different parts to your stable, some of whom, by the way, are very small and agile, that, you know, certain acquisitions, who you can now bring to the table to help clients in a way that they probably hadn't thought of from a more traditional agency approach, or they might not get from an indie. So I think there are benefits, huge benefits, of being part of a network.
Yeah. Okay, Gurman, you're a man who is a entrepreneur, but also you're the evil global CEO as well. So yeah, you've got both roles. But actually, one of the reasons I invited you on this panel, Rob Norman, ex of WPP, I know, advised you, and he praised MIQ and you specifically as the best response he'd seen to COVID. Yeah, do you want to talk about how you actually did that? Yeah, give us a quick minute on some of the key headlines that you told your people. You know, again, having seen that work, I too was impressed.
Yeah, no, thanks. I think, look, I guess just like many businesses, I think now's the opportunity to really, you know, look after your people, who in turn effectively look after your clients. And I think, you know, there's a lot of things you might say in the past, and, you know, you might be on your sort of stages at your all hands meetings, etc., saying we care about people. Now's the real time to show it. So quite simply, what we did is we just prioritized our investment to provide stability for our people in a time where, you know, give them a bit of certainty when there's a lot of uncertainty. And so we're an independent private business. We have, you know, just 2 or 3 major shareholders, and we had that flex, I guess, to do that. And we just sort of said we wanted to guarantee people that their jobs were safe no matter what happens to revenue. And actually, that's probably been our best weapon, because the level of agility has gone up, the level of hustle's gone up, the level of innovation's gone up. And I just think by just doubling down on our people, we're effectively providing better solutions for our clients. And we just made the early move to say that's the #1 priority for any bit of money that this business has, and we're not going to flounder on that, no matter what happens on the top line, basically. And that's the call we made, basically.
Yeah, great message. Great message, well done. Yeah. Okay, let's finish on a high. Again, I saw today Twitter has said that their employees can work from home forever, which I think, if I was working at Twitter, I would immediately look for another job. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your favourite things that you think will be the positive changes and the efficiencies that will remain when we're back in the new normal? Who wants to go first on that one?
I don't mind going first. I mean, I think there's we've already talked about loads of really positive stuff.
Yeah, it's been a very positive call. I like this.
Yeah. You know, deeper, less formal client relationships, cracking briefs in a fraction of the time that it would normally take. You know, it's interesting to think about briefing cycles, and actually, you know, the historically quite long, lengthy briefing cycles from brief to execution, I think, are just going to get shorter and shorter, and that's about agility and different ways of working. I mean, I think it's difficult to think that we'll go back to working exactly like we used to ever. I think that full occupancy of offices in big cities just won't happen. You know, we spoke about levels of anxiety that people have about the virus and contracting it, getting to work on public transport is going to remain an issue for quite a long time. So I think more flexible and agile working will just become more accelerated, more commonplace. And I think
more flexible and agile working. We'll take that from you. Yeah. Did you have one more thing?
Well, I think talent and where it's located. So I think, the roles, the talent that we have in the business won't be so dictated by geography. So I think we're going to see more dispersed teams potentially, and talent from different parts of the country and even the world, because the office and everybody being in an office in one location is just not the new normal moving forwards, I don't think.
Okay. Hamish, one thing.
Well, I think to that point, I mean, that's something that I think we feel really excited about, because we had a strategy in the UK this year of geographical diversification. So we have offices in Leeds, Manchester, Stafford, London, Edinburgh, and the idea was to actually make more use of the diversity and everything that would bring. And obviously, when you do that, there are anxieties about, well, how is everyone going to work together? But I think what this has proven to us is that actually geography doesn't matter. And that as long as you have technology that works, you can do that. So that's one good thing that has lessened any anxiety I might have had about that approach. But I think the other thing that I think the really positive thing that's coming is what Gurman said right at the beginning about the fact that he's seeing clients testing things now that they might not have been prepared to test before. And that is absolutely something I think we're seeing more of. People doing things they hadn't historically done, and therefore accelerating the move into more innovative and interesting areas. Or implementing plans around digital and the use of digital technology that might have just been a bit more reticent about. And I think we're going to see that just, those things accelerate and get to end goals of technology change faster than normal.
Yeah, agile and flexible, okay. Better testing, a better test and refined network from you, which I like. Gurman, one thing.
I've got two things quickly.
3 seconds.
Yeah,
we'll
okay.
Yeah,
mobility, that you can now, I think, point your best people and most appropriate people to a client challenge regardless of borders or location. And then I'm a programmatic digital guy, so I just think the convergence of spend going digitally and programmatically is only going to increase as users now pretty much consume most of their media through digital means, which I think is a great thing.
Right, yeah, it would certainly be positive for your business if that happened. But yeah, right. Thank you all very much. Enjoyed today's panel. Nice to see you all looking so well.